this is part 2 of this particular build. I'm not sure what the part is in the entire series. If this is the first time you're seeing the video on this build, I suggest you go back and see the intro so you know what the goal is. But we're going to be jumping right into it. We've got a lot to do, so let's get into it. We already know what the goal is, and what I've done, and I'll show you, is I've gone through and marked the frame where I think we need to cut it and how far we need to stretch it. I've also measured where our rear axle post tower is, and this is one of the great things about the Mayhem Metalworks fab table, is it's completely adjustable, but it will stay true even if you move it. What I mean by that is you can loosen up the mounts for this post and you can slide it back. That gives you a few inches of adjustment. If you need more than that, you simply move back on the holes in the table. It will index into those holes and we can slide it back. So I've made my marks. I made little notes all over the table, which is fine because you can just come back with acetone and wipe it off. And it's somewhat complicated. It's not too bad. I think I'm overcomplicating it because I want to make sure it's right. But let me show you the marks I've made and kind of explain how much and how far we're going to be doing everything. So this is what I was talking about. There's some adjustment here for a couple inches. If you need more than that, you simply move the post back and you set the shouldered bolts through the plate and into the holes, and it will index that, so it'll be true. So I've made a mark here. I know that the edge of that needs to move back here, and that's going to give us an 8-inch stretch. So we're going to be stretching the whole frame back 8 inches, and that'll give us enough room for our rear tire to clear and for the motor to fit in there and give us a nice length of chain. We don't want the chain too short. But due to the shape of the frame, as you can tell, those back legs kind of tilt in just a tad. So what we're gonna have to do is when we cut to do the stretch, we're actually gonna cut it here, and that we're gonna have to rotate to keep it at the correct angle. Now, there is gonna be a process to this. We have to cut and stretch here. And if you notice, it's between the two seat mounts, and that's so that when I cut this and that side, that this section doesn't just spring open and we lose our dimensions. And also, in order to clear this big chungus motor in that frame, we're gonna have to cut here and down here and lift or spread the top of the frame and the bottom of the frame. And I think I made a note somewhere. I think it was 4 inches. So the distance between the top of the bottom frame rail and the bottom of the top frame rail has to increase 4 inches. So what we'll do is we'll do our stretch first, and then we'll make our cuts here and there. We'll remove the motor plate for the Predator because we're not going to be using that. I may weld in a couple little temporary stays between the frame rails so we don't get that spring action. We'll have this thing stretched and spread apart enough to clear our front and rear tires and this motor. So yeah, what I'm going to do is, for the like 6th time, I've actually lost sleep over this. I'm going to go through, double check again, make sure my marks are where they should be, make any adjustments, and then we're going to start cutting. And once we make cuts and we get the tubing separated, I'll double check the wall thickness so I know what to order, and then we're going to have to figure out some sort of slug to put in the tubing because we want this thing to be strong, because we are packing a little bit more power into it than what it would have seen with just a little small lot Predator in it. and some extra weight too. So that's something to be, reminded of. So yeah, let me triple, quadruple, whatever, check this thing, and then we'll start cutting, and I'll bring you back once we're ready to start cutting. And I've gone around and taped everything off to give us a nice straight line. That tape looks weird. It's actually made for powder coating, but it is rather stiff. You can't really get it to waver side to side like you can some masking tape. There's no stretch to it, so you're almost guaranteed a straight line. I've made my notes. I've got some notes on the table. I've got some bracing clamped to the frame. That way when we cut it, it doesn't spring apart. And what I had the weight on was actually some of these. These are the axle spacers. These were kind of a pain to find. These are 100 millimeter. I'm gonna have to cut them down. I think my rough measurement was 60 millimeters. And that is to go in here in the jig. You can see the axle right there. And what that's going to do is keep our frame from spreading apart or closing in when we cut it. So these will be cut to length. They'll fit in between the frame and the Mayhem Metalworks rear axle plate on both sides. And then we can start cutting. There it is. The back section's cut. Here, in between the seat mount, as you can see. Then we gotta cut here, and then we'll drop our jack down. I believe it's 4 inches, and we'll drop our Mayhem Metalworks rear axle plate down 4 inches, and then we'll slide it back. What did I say? 8 inches, I think. I'll have to double check, triple check actually, because we don't want to screw this up. But yeah, everyone shed a tear and let's have a moment of silence for this flawless RCF frame that we just cut up. Now that we've got everything cut, I threw the motor up there just to make sure everything's gonna clear. I think we're gonna look good. I've gone ahead and moved our rear axle plate and post back the 8 inches and dropped it the 4 inches along with this jack. Dropped the engine plate down 4 inches. We still have to remove the engine plate and the foot pegs, but I've also gone ahead and cleaned up one of our cuts and measured our tubing so that I know what wall thickness to get. So I'm going to order that, and I also need to either order or make some sort of slugs to go in the tubes so that when we weld in our extensions, it's a nice strong joint. So I'm going to go ahead and see what I can do to figure that out, and bring you back once I have all the materials. I just want to show you guys what I'm doing to actually make those slugs. We've got our tubing. I think I may have screwed up and ordered the wrong 1-inch tubing. I think I went too heavy on the wall thickness. That, or they gave me the wrong stuff. So I need to confirm that, fix that. Regardless, I don't have a lathe, and the way I ordered the tubing to go into the RCF frame, I found that some 7/8 tubing would fit in there. Almost. It was real close, like we're talking thousandths off. So what I do to get it a little bit thinner, we chuck it up into our rotary weld positioner, which if you guys have followed the channel for a long time, you probably remember this. It was a collaboration between myself and Jason from Code Makes It Go. What it is you excuse the wiring, that's not him, that's me. It's a little control box, and it power supply and a stepper driver, and this box actually tells this controller to spin this motor, or the stepper, I'm sorry, that is belt driven to this chuck head, lathe head, whatever you want to call it, 3-jaw chuck, okay, whatever. You can change the gear ratio, you can change the revolutions per minute. There's even a feature where you can get it to turn a certain distance, pause, turn, pause, turn, pause. And you set your settings on that little control box, and then there's a little foot pedal that goes with it. You give that a tap and it starts whatever you've told it to program. And he put it in this really cool box here, with on and off switch, little push buttons for the menus and settings. It's even got my logo on it. I'll definitely put a link to that video somewhere up there. Once I get the tube chucked into the positioner and it starts rotating, what I do is take this bad boy, and this is from cfutools.com. Definitely go check him out. He makes some pretty cool stuff. And this adapts a Harbor Freight tool and puts these bigger pulleys on it. You can run a bigger belt, and as the tubing spins, I just kind of run this back and forth and try to stay consistent. And what happens is it will whittle down that wall thickness. There's the original wall thickness, and after it's been kind of ground down with my little setup, not much of a difference, but it's enough that it fits inside of that tubing. So then we cut a 2-inch section of that, and to cut all my tubing, what I've been using has been this Evolution carbide chop saw. These are a little bit of an expense, and like almost all you guys that are probably watching, I didn't really have a budget for this when I first started. So what I did was I started out with an abrasive chop saw, which will get the job done. There's usually some cleanup afterwards. There's quite a spark show, a lot of debris flying around. You don't get that with this. It's got a little chip drawer down there, and it actually makes chips. Not a lot of dust, just chips. And the cut is super clean. Very little cleanup afterwards. Sometimes you'll have a little flashing piece that you just take a file or grind or two, and it comes right off. And it's cool to the touch. Not as much noise as the abrasive chop saw, but like I said, a little more expensive, but you are getting a lot for what you're paying for. And this blade, it's no joke. You'll get a lot more life out of that blade than you would an abrasive chop saw. So yeah, it is an expensive pill to swallow, but if you can do it, definitely go for it. And what I did was, when I started with the abrasive saw, I used it for a few years and saved up my money and sold that one to someone who was just getting started, and that helped fund this bad boy. So yeah, definitely, if you're doing this with any sort of repetition, it's best to reinvest into yourself with the tools, especially if you're doing this as a business. What I mean is, if you do a project or a mini bike or a full-size bike or whatever it is, you sell that, the profit that you get from that, you know, of course you need to pay yourself, but you need to take a part of that and save it to invest in tools so that you could then become more efficient and maybe a little better quality. So you invest in yourself, and before you know it, you end up with the tools and stuff that you can turn the stuff out so much quicker, so much easier, and with less mess. The benefits are huge. So yeah, just a little bit of knowledge to stick in your back pocket. But now that I've got that tubing kind of whittled down to where we need, I'm going to chop it up into 2-inch sections. And then what we'll do is we will drill some holes in our tubing. And when we put that 2-inch slug in there, we'll do a little rosette weld with the MIG welder, and that'll hold it in that main tube. And then when we go to insert it into the other tube, the extension piece, it's not going to drop down into our tubing and get lost. So that holds it in place. And once we get everything where we want it, we run a full bead around the seam, and that thing's gonna be locked in. It's gonna be nice and tight. It's gonna be nice and strong, and that's what you want. So yeah, I'm gonna get the cut in some of this tube and making these extensions, drilling these holes, and we're gonna stretch this thing out. I've got our 8-inch extensions just kind of, I guess, tack welded in place through the rosette welds. I think it still looks pretty good. I mean, it's still got that mini bike kind of look to it, just a little bit longer, maybe kind of like a drag frame or something. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to end it here. I think the video is going a little long. I know we didn't do too much. I just explained a lot. So what I'm gonna do to make up for that is off camera, I am going to get the rest of all our extension pieces cut, drilled, slugged, and all that, and put together. And when I bring you back, the frame is going to be ready to go. We'll have the stretch done, and we'll have the lift between the top and the bottom of the frame done. And we'll start cutting out the motor plate and start figuring out and putting in our new motor mounts for the new motor. Then we'll test fit a rear wheel, make sure everything looks good, and then we'll reevaluate the front forks and see if we need to lengthen those, shorten them, or whatever. I don't think we will, but we won't know for sure until we get the motor on that frame with it all extended, and the wheels and tires on it, and see how we're looking. But that is it for this one. And oh yeah, and I'm also out of MIG gas too, so there's that. So that's it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. Sorry for the delay between videos, but I'm trying to get a lot done in the videos, between videos, so that I can bring you good episodes. And I don't want to make this a 40 episode build. So yep, that's it in this one, and see you next time. Until then, get up, get out there, and do it.